Hello everyone, welcome to the Life Sketches channel. My name is Emma. I'm a 20-year-old girl with young red hair and tan skin. It was one of the rare days that I was home. I was in the kitchen and the front door was closed while other family members left the house. It was one of the rare weekends that my parents were out together. My dad and mom were on vacation, and my stepbrother Michael was a 22-year-old brunette with a muscular body and an American football player. It wasn't unusual to be alone with Michael, but today something was different. I started to prepare lunch, trying to ignore the strange feeling in my stomach. Michael had been friendlier than usual lately. I had just finished chopping the chickens when I heard Michael coming slowly down the stairs. His steps were slow, and he seemed to be trying to be quiet. He stopped at the door, leaned against it, and said, "Hello, Emma." His voice was strange and unusually charismatic. "What are you doing, just fetishing?" I replied, trying to keep my voice cheerful. I said, "Do you want some?" She said okay, but unlike usual, she didn't come out of the kitchen and continued to watch me with a strange expression. That day I was wearing only my underwear and a white nightgown that I liked. I dress comfortably when I cook at home. I could feel her gaze on me as I walked around the kitchen, and it made me uncomfortable. When I finally turned to her, I asked her if everything was okay. She had that look on her face again that I had noticed for the last few weeks, but didn't dare to question. But this time he couldn't stop looking me up and down. "Anyway," he said, "yes, why?" and smiled, but there was no humor in his eyes. I said, "You look a bit nervous." I could tell he was lying, but I turned around and focused on my work. Suddenly he came up to the counter and got very close. I could smell his skin and I got very excited. He started saying, his voice excited me and it sounded very erotic. There was a pause and I didn't dare look at him. No parents, no interruptions. I swallowed hard. My pulse quickened. "Yes, I know," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, but I couldn't hide my nervousness, and my desire for him awoke involuntarily in me. I was clumsy with excitement, spilled the sauce on the floor, and as I cleaned up, my nightgown peeled off, leaving me in just my white lacy underwear. I was dying of excitement and embarrassment. My emotions were everywhere. I looked into his eyes for a moment, and he was focused on my breasts, my legs, my crotch, almost without breathing. I quickly recovered and the air between us grew heavy. I turned off the stove and started to put the food on the plates, but my hands were shaking slightly. I wasn't sure where this was going. Part of me didn't want to know, but the other part of me that I wasn't proud of was curious. Michael touched my arm lightly. Although it was a small contact, it had an unexpected effect. I stiffened and asked what was wrong. I jokingly tried to lighten the situation, but instead of pulling back, he came closer. "I've been thinking about you a lot lately." "I can't stop thinking about you," he said in a low voice, almost in a whisper. His words hung in the air, and suddenly I realized where this was going. "Michael, don't do this," I said. My voice was trembling slightly. His eyes darkened, and for a moment I didn't know what to do. He continued, "I'm just saying." There was a sly smile on his lips. What's the harm in just talking? But I didn't think that what he wanted to talk about was really talking. I took a step back a little. The kitchen suddenly felt too small, and the distance between Michael and me became suffocating. His words were light on the surface, but there was something darker underneath. Something that made me feel like I was standing on the edge of a cliff as he spoke. To take control of the situation, I said, "Ha!" I let out a forced laugh, but his voice came out shaky. "What exactly do you want to talk about?" Michael, his eyes flashed with something elusive, but he didn't answer right away. Instead, he took another step towards me. He closed the distance again. The exquisite scent of his skin was right under my nose. I could feel his muscular body all the way down. My heart quickened and I could feel the tension building. "Emma," he said. His voice was soft but insistent. "You know what I mean." I turned around. I picked up the plates I had prepared. I could feel his presence behind me. He loomed over me like a shadow. I had to get out of the kitchen. I had to escape this tense moment. "I'll take these to the living room," I mumbled, trying to say something casual. I left without turning around, but he followed me. When I put the plates on the coffee table, Michael was sitting on the couch, his eyes never leaving me. It was like he was waiting for something, but he couldn't say what. So I sat on the other end of the couch. I kept a safe distance from him. The TV was on, but he wasn't watching it. His eyes were always on me. I could feel it. It was something unspoken but undeniable. We weren't related by blood, but he was my brother. Even if he was my half-brother, I couldn't have him. Have you ever thought about what it would be like if you weren't my brother? He asked, suddenly breaking the silence. His voice was low, as if he had said something he shouldn't have. My stomach nodded, as if he had said something that neither of us knew how to handle. He was crossing a line that neither of us knew how to handle. I didn't answer for a while. I said, "How am I supposed to answer something like that?" Is a strange question, but the real answer in my heart is there is no limit to what I can live with you. I desire you like crazy. I reached for the food on the plate, trying to deflect the subject, but I had already lost my appetite. He leaned forward and pressed down. "We are not even related by blood. You are just my half-brother." That was the excuse that made this conversation seem completely wrong, but he wasn't doing it right. I finally looked at him, and the intensity in his eyes surprised me. He wasn't joking. This wasn't just a joke between brothers. It was serious, and it scared me more than I wanted to admit. "Michael," I said, "we can't." But he cut me off. He asked me why. His voice was soft, almost pleading. "Who can say we're doing anything wrong? We're just talking." He kept using that word like a euphemism to hide his true intentions. I shook my head. "It doesn't matter. We are family now. We are family whether you like it or not." He didn't say anything for a while, but I could see the disappointment building up behind the calm mask on his face. Finally, he approached me and said, "I see the way you look at me sometimes. Don't pretend you don't think about it." I froze. His words hit me harder than I expected. Because deep down inside it was true. I wanted him. My desire for him was very different from what I felt for my boyfriend. Moments that I had always suppressed, that I didn't dare to dwell on, suddenly appeared. I said, "Stop." My voice was almost a whisper. I didn't know if I was saying it to him or to myself. But he didn't stop. Instead, he gently pushed a lock of hair away from my face, and his fingers lingered there a little too long. Butterflies fluttered inside me. His touch sent a shiver down my spine, and my body reacted in a way I didn't want. I was melting. His touch was sending sparks through my body. But this shouldn't have happened. It was wrong. I came to myself and hated myself for not pushing him away right away. "Michael, please," I said with my voice shaking. "This isn't right." He pulled his hands back, but his eyes didn't leave my eyes for a moment. I thought he was going to try to go further, and it happened as I thought, and he pulled me by my hair and my lips met his lips. I loved it unbelievably. I was on cloud 9. I was soaking wet. I had been with many men up to that day, but this was completely different. I couldn't breathe, and I stopped squeezing myself and jumped straight into his lap. We could have kissed there for hours. I enjoyed every touch of him on my body. His squeeze on my hips was so gentle. I melted every time he kissed my breasts. He was like a master in my private area. Our love-making at the table where I sat for lunch was so exciting that I didn't notice the time, and when I came to, it was 12 o'clock at night. I was so embarrassed and ashamed. We were both drenched in sweat. We sat in silence in separate corners of the couch, neither of us knowing what to say, my pulse not slowing down. My mind was still spinning fast. I had to push him back. It should never have happened, but it had happened once. I couldn't resist his desires. What were we going to tell my father and mother now? I didn't want another man in my life. I only wanted him, but what was he thinking was his feelings for me, eh? Momentary desire or a real desire? Was it a real desire? Was it a real love like I felt for him? I wanted to know how it would be, and I wanted to close the subject forever and go on with our lives as if nothing had happened. I fell asleep thinking about it, and when I woke up it was a complete disappointment for me. Michael left a note on the table. "Everything was so nice, Emma, thank you. But you know it was just a momentary thing between us, and I want to keep it a secret, and I want you to know that it will never happen again, little brother." I saw this note and my dreams were shattered. I don't want to tell my story anymore. My dreams were shattered. I apologize. Thank you for listening to my story. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and stay tuned for more stories.